One of the things that is widely discussed throughout the world, and from what I've seen on the internet and various talk shows on the subject, is whether the Earth is actually hollow, along with other planets that are out there that seem to have openings at the poles. This is true for Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, Mars. There are various images out there you can search for. If you will just look, you can actually see aurora borealis coming from the poles of these planets. Some of these planets which have no business having an aurora borealis effect. So it begs the question, what is going on to cause this, and where does the Earth's aurora borealis actually come from? The North and South poles. Now, is the Earth hollow? Does it have a central sun? Does it have land masses on the inside with a central star? From what we know, there are confirmed openings at the North and South poles of Earth. We have sent spy planes as well as drones, the same types of drones that are used in Iraq and Afghanistan to fly over the poles. And from what we can see, the closest point at the pole right near the opening, the surrounding area for about 50 miles is completely warm. It is 80 degrees Fahrenheit. It is warm, there is vegetation, there is grass, there are mountains. It is not the horribly cold terrain that the rest of the North and South poles are known for. You will see that once the farther that you come inland into the center where the polar opening is, the more greenery and the rapid temperature increase you will see. So there is a definite reason for the openings of these entrances at the poles. There is something that is heating those entrances and heating the surrounding area. The radius of 50 miles it's a large area, which obviously means there is something heating, and we've confirmed that the aurora borealis is coming from inside of the polar openings.
And at first, and I asked him, have you ever taken any polar flights before? And he said, oh, sure. I've flown numerous polar flights over the years. I used to work for SAS Airlines, as well as some others, and I've done it many times. And I then asked him, so when you fly these polar flights, do you fly directly over the North Pole? And he then all of a sudden got defensive on me, and he said, well, wait, what are you asking me these questions for? He's looking around to see who else was paying attention. He said, look, you cannot, when pilots fly northern polar flights, they cannot fly directly over the North Pole. There is no North Pole. You fly around the pole. Why do you fly around the pole? Because there's a big frickin' hole up there. You cannot fly over the hole.
far in a past time, lost in the space-time, the children of light looked down on the world. Seeing the children of men in their bondage, bound by the force that came from beyond, knew they that only by freedom from bondage could man ever rise from the earth to the sun. Down they descended and created bodies, taking the semblance of men as their own. 32 were there of the children, sons of light, who had come among men, seeking to free from the bondage of darkness those who were bound by the force from beyond. Deep in the halls of life grew a flower, flaming, expanding, driving back with the night. Placed in the center, a ray of great potence, life-giving, light-giving, filling with power all who came near it. Placed they around it thrones, 32 places for each of the children of light, placed so that they were bathed in the radiance, filled with the life from the eternal light. Their time after time placed they their first created bodies so that they might be filled with the spirit of life. 100 years out of each 1,000 must the life-giving light flame forth on their bodies, quickening, awakening the spirit of life. There in the circle from eon to eon, sit the great masters, living a life not known among men. There in the halls of life they lie sleeping, free flows their soul through the bodies of men. There in the hall of life, filled with their wisdom, not known not to the races of man, living forever beneath the cold fire of life, sit the children of light. Then grew in the great space before me, flame after flame, from the veil of the night. Uncounted millions leaped they before me, some flaming forth as flowers of fire. Others there were that shed a dim radiance, flowing but faintly from out of the night. Some there were that faded swiftly, others that grew from a small spark of light. Each surrounded by its dim veil of darkness, yet flaming with light that could never be quenched. Coming and going like fireflies in springtime, filled they with space, with light and with life. These are lights that are souls among men, growing and fading, existing forever, changing yet living, through death into life. Oft have I journeyed the deep hidden passage, looked on the light that is life among men. There beneath the flowers of life ever living, searched I the hearts and the secrets of men. Found I that man is but living in darkness, light of the great fire is hidden within. Deep in earth's heart lies the flower, the source of the spirit that binds all in its form. Or know ye that the earth is living in body as thou art alive in thine own formed form? The flower of life is as thine own place of spirit and streams through the earth as thine flows through thy form, giving of life to the earth and its children, renewing the spirit from form unto form. This is the spirit that is form of thy body, shaping and moulding into its form.
shelf roughens. Dark rocks, called nunataks, appear above the ice. Then rugged mountain ranges as far as the eye can see. Bunger leans forward in amazement. His eyes have caught a sudden and unbelievable change in scenery. The universal white has turned to chocolate brown, dotted with blue. A cameraman goes into action. 300 square miles of land without snow. Land that might be in New Mexico or Arizona. Pictures alone will prove Bunger has discovered a warm oasis in the shadow of the pole. It is for such supreme moments as this that men brave the hardships of exploration. The astounding, undreamed of fact is that they are over a chain of warm water lakes whose shores, except for small patches, are free of ice and snow.
On the 14th of December, 1944, Reuters reported in the New York Times, "A mysterious illuminated ball is the latest Nazi air warfare weapon. This means that towards the end of the Second World War, Germany was in possession of a secret weapon which displayed all the typical characteristics of a UFO." Victor Schauberger's experimental flying prototypes worked on the principle of levitation. Esoteric knowledge played an ever-increasing role in the search for new sources of energy and motive power. Such research as there was particularly important in the development of electrogravitational and tachometric propulsion. This seemed to be at the very core of the alternative technology. The energy source of the future, cheap, clean, and independent of raw materials. Two special departments, U-13 and SSE-4, were set up to concentrate exclusively on the realization of this new technology. Before the end of 1934, the Friel Society had built its first light aircraft, the RFC-2 round aircraft. It was fitted with an improved Vril propulsion system and, for the first time, magnetic impulse steering. It measured hardly more than 16 feet from end to end, but it worked. It already possessed two typical characteristics of UFOs, the optical blurring of the contours when accelerating, and the colored lights depending on the level of power applied. Only the SS showed a slight interest in the work of the Vril Society. Its own Black Sun formation had meanwhile set up Research Department 4, SSE-4 for short, which was responsible for coming up with alternative sources of energy. What is certain is that their aim was to make Germany independent of foreign crude oil imports. Nevertheless, stimulated by Victor Schauberger and the success of the latest Vril success, SSE-4 now began to construct its own light aircraft. Using Captain Hans Kohler's tachyometer converter as a basis, and appropriating many Vril components, they developed their own Tula aero engine. Towards the end of 1938, they had constructed a small propeller-driven light aircraft, the RFC-4, with the express purpose of observing how disc-shaped objects behave in flight. By 1939, the SS had already built its RFC-5, the first long-distance aircraft measuring more than 65 feet, and with the mysterious name Haunebu-1. Under tight security, the Haunebu-1 made its maiden flight, in all probability, in August of 1939. Documents show that by 1941, the British had already found out about these top-secret SS experiments.
Here we have a rotating sphere of water about 25 millimeters in diameter, and inside this sphere are a whole bunch of little tiny air bubbles. And we will see what the angular acceleration due to rotation does to these air bubbles as a function of time. What you are observing are the bubbles moving to the center axis of rotation. As a function of time, they will form this rather tightly packed bubble core. These bubbles are kept from coalescing from a small amount of added surfactant to the water. Here we have a rotating sphere filled with bubbles and tea leaves, and as expected, the bubbles go to the center and the tea leaves go to the outside edge, along with a few chunks of orange peel.